Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Welcome, my friends. We are going to cover tonight what devotional service to Radha and Krishna is, and what these Sanskrit terms mean. So this will be a good video for new people to Krishna Consciousness and practicing devotees as well, as a nice little refresher on the deep definitions of these Sanskrit terms. So this video is going to be very much focused on that, and we're going to go into some specific verses, some quotes directly from the Brahma Samhita, the Sri Ishopanishad, and the 1000 Names of Sri Radha. Okay, so let us begin by offering our obeisances to Ayendra Prabhu, Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura, all the previous acharyas back to Lord Brahma and Lord Sri Krishna. So, Krishna Consciousness is the practice of engaging in uniting other eternal beings with the goddess and God. So, Krishna Consciousness is the practice of uniting our friends, our relatives, and everyone we know and encounter in the world with Radha and Krishna, which are the names of the goddess and God. And this process of uniting others with them is the definition and practice of Krishna Consciousness. Okay? So, the main practice of Krishna Consciousness is chanting out loud what is called the Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this mantra I've just chanted is the Maha Mantra, the great mantra, the great chant for deliverance, and the eternal song and dance of paradise. So paradise is called Goloka Vrindavana. Goloka is referring to the senses, so taste, touch, sight, sound, and all these things. This is what Go is referring to. Loka is referring to world, and Vrindavana is referring to the forest predominated over by a goddess named Vrinda Devi. Vana meaning forest, and Vrinda referring to the name of this particular goddess who presides over paradise. Okay, so Radha and Krishna, the goddess and God, and we with them are eternally in paradise. Vrindavana, Goloka Vrindavana, is the name of paradise. And by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. By chanting this and going out in the streets, in public, and dancing, we are bringing other living beings, our friends, our relatives, our family members, and everyone and everything we encounter back to their original relationship with the goddess and God in paradise. Okay? This is what Krishna Consciousness means, and this is what devotional service means and is. Okay? Now, of course, devotional service, meaning activities which are designed to give pleasure to the goddess and God, and to give pleasure to other living beings in this process as well. So, I'm going to read a verse from the Brahma Samhita, and then I'll explain what the words mean. Now, I encourage everyone who is coming into Krishna Consciousness to get a copy of this book. It's called the Sri Brahma Samhita. Now, these verses were spoken at the very the beginning of the creation of this universe. So God, Krishna himself, instructed Lord Brahma, who is the secondary engineer of this universe under Krishna's direction, who then manifests the planets, the various species, the demigods, the demons, the humans, and all sorts of different species. There are 8,400,000 species which he predominates over, and his lifespan lasts over 8 billion years, and there is an exact date and time his lifespan lasts. So this is the prayer he spoke to Lord Krishna once Krishna had actually revealed to him information about his deeper nature, once he had heard the flute song of Lord Sri Krishna. Okay? So, Hare Krishna Ishvara Nandini, thank you for joining us tonight, or day in your side of the world. Yes? Alright, so we're going to read from the first text of the Brahma Samhita. So if you have it on you, I encourage you to pop this up. It's this one right here. Okay. Ishvara Paramaha Krishnaha. Okay. So I'm going to sing this in Sanskrit, and then I'll explain what it means. And thankfully, it's written right here for us, the word-for-word translation. This is one thing that Prabhupada wonderfully did for us. He laid out exactly word for word what these Sanskrit words mean, and provided the translation and the commentary for every single verse. A wonderful, infinitely valuable service for which we are all eternally indebted in loving gratefulness to Srila Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura. Okay? So this one was done by Bhaktisiddhanta, Srila Prabhupada's spiritual teacher, and his commentaries were also done. These commentaries in this book were done by Bhaktisiddhanta also. Okay? So here's the text, the verse. Ishvaraha Paramaha Krishna Sachirananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. I'll read it one more time. Ishvaraha Paramaha Krishna Sachirananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. So this is the verse that Lord Brahma was chanting to Lord Sri Krishna at the start of this universe. And what he's saying is, Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme Godhead. He has an eternal blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. Okay. So, the word Ishvara means the controller. Okay? Parama means supreme. Krishna, of course, is referring to Krishna, the name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sat is referring to eternal existence. Chit is referring to absolute knowledge. Ananda, bliss. And Vigraha, eternal form. Anadi, without beginning. Adi, the origin. Govinda, Lord Govinda, who gives shelter to the senses and to the cows in Goloka. And Sarvakarana Karanam, the cause of all causes. Okay? So, this verse here is explaining who Krishna is, his position, that he is the source of everyone and everything, the source of all the different Lord Brahmas, and there are many different universes that are in existence. So, the way Krishna does the universal stuff is what he does is basically we're all in paradise and transcendence with him eternally, but he also has expanded functions. So Krishna's actual original function with us is beyond the concept of God altogether. However, his God function is one of his expanded functions. It's one of his first expanded functions, which is called Vasudeva. So when we say the word Krishna, we're referring to Krishna in his original highest feature, the all-attractive one. Okay? When we use the word Vasudeva, we're referring to Krishna specifically as in his function as being God, which is his secondary function after his Krishna function. Okay? So Krishna will be referred to throughout all the scriptures as Krishna, naturally. But in various cases, he'll be functioning either as Krishna originally or as Vasudeva, which is specifically referring to Krishna as God. Okay? So, the most important thing to remember, though, is that Krishna is the original name. Okay? So when Krishna is being spoken, we're referring to Krishna in his original highest feature, his most intimate, deepest feature. Okay? And then the Vasudeva feature is his expanded God feature. Same form, same everything else, just his function is slightly different when he's functioning as God versus functioning in his original, more intimate, loving function. Okay? So, the next verse we're going to read is going to be from Sri Upanishad. It's going to be the first verse from Sri Upanishad, actually. And so the word Shri, you'll hear this a lot, and you'll see it in front of a lot of different names. You'll see it in front of both male and female names in Sanskrit. Now, this is also ultimately where we originally get the word Sir from. It comes originally from Shri, actually. But Shri specifically is referring to males and females, but Shri is another name of Sri Radha. And she expands herself as the goddess of fortune. So just like Krishna expands himself just like Krishna expands himself into his God function, Sri Radha, the Supreme Goddess, has her deeper, more intimate function beyond being the Supreme Goddess, but she also expands herself into the role of the Supreme Goddess also. And that in that name she is known as Shri, and also Lakshmi Devi, and many other names like this. So Shri is referring to opulences which emanate from the goddess, the expansion of Sri Radha. Okay? So, this is the invocation of Sri Upanishad. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. We'll read it one more time. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Translation: the personality of Godhead is perfect and complete, and because he is completely perfect, all emanations from him, such as this phenomenal world, are perfectly equipped as complete wholes. Whatever is produced of the complete whole is also complete in itself. Because he is the complete whole, even though so many complete units emanate from him, he remains the complete balance. So the word Om or Aum is referring to the complete whole. It is another wording for the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, a branch off wording. So the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is more specifically referring to Radha and Krishna. Okay, whenever this is spoken, always specifically referring to them, actually. And when we say Aum, Aum can specifically be referring to Radha and Krishna, but Aum can also be referring to many other branch off things as well. Okay, so this is why Aum is being said at the beginning of all mantras that are chanted, things like this. But this is also why Aum does not need to be chanted before chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, because the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra does not require Aum, whereas most other mantras do require Aum, being the expansion of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Okay, and then Purnam means perfectly complete. Okay, Adaha means that, Purnam, perfectly complete, and then Idam is this phenomenal world. Purnat, from the all-perfect, Purnam, complete unit, Udachyate is produced, Purnasya, of the complete whole, Purnam, completely, all. Adaya, having been taken away, Purnam, the complete balance, Eva, even. Avavashishyate is remaining. So, Krishna is above and beyond everything, separate and individual, but he is also permeating everything as well. But in spite of permeating everything, he maintains his individual, infinitely unique identity above and beyond everything also at the same time, simultaneously. And we also maintain our eternally unique existence as well. Okay, so now we're going to start going into terms that are used all the time in Krishna Consciousness. So when new people are coming into Krishna Consciousness, they'll be hearing these terms day in and day out all the time. So the first term we'll cover is Bhakti, Bhakti Yoga. Okay? We'll cover both parts of that word. So Bhakti is specifically referring to devotion. Bhakti Devi is referring to one of the expansions of the Supreme Goddess, Sri Radha. Bhakti Devi, first off. And so Bhakti Devi, in the process of Bhakti, means devotion. Okay? So Bhakti is not just one of many processes of yoga. Because the word yoga actually means to unite with Radha and Krishna. So the words together, Bhakti Yoga, mean devotion in union, in loving intimate union. So the word yoga means to yoke or union. So if you visualize a wheel with the spokes, the outer circle, and then the inner, and then the spokes connecting that, this is a very simple illustration of the relationship between the goddess, the outer circle, Krishna, the inner circle, and then the spokes connecting both and interrelating with both of them as living beings together. Okay? So all three of us together in infinite eternal union. This is the essence of Bhakti Yoga. So there are other types of yoga which are subsidiary processes or processes leading up to Bhakti Yoga, which is the culmination of the yoga process. Okay? The other processes of yoga are not required to get to Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is independent of the other processes and also the highest of all the other yoga processes. And in fact, the other processes of yoga are only yoga to the degree that they are mixed with bhakti to some degree or another, actually. So postures, so when someone is doing postures, when you hear people going to yoga class and all this, in most cases that's actually not yoga at all. They're simply doing what's called asanas, which is postures and positions. So that's pretty much just exercise. It's not yoga actually, though. They're just doing asanas. So they should really call it asana classes instead of yoga classes. Because yoga is referring to actual devotion to the goddess and god, Radha and Krishna, in the midst of whatever practices you're doing otherwise. So there is Kriya Yoga, there's Jnana Yoga, and there's all sorts of other types of yoga, and we'll cover what those terms also mean as well. There's also Karma Yoga. But Bhakti Yoga is the original function of the living being. Okay? So, Bhakti Yoga meaning devotion to Radha and Krishna, devotion to the goddess and God in pure love and affection. Now, the term jnana, which is often said, it has a J at the beginning and then an N with the line over the top. This word jnana is referring to knowledge or information about the absolute truth. Okay, so jnana yoga is referring to the process of trying to understand Radha and Krishna through philosophical speculations, information gathering, and contemplating informational details. Okay, that is jnana yoga. Now, it is jnana yoga if the goal and the direction is to understand Radha and Krishna, the goddess and God. If that is not the focus or goal, then it is not jnana yoga, it is simply jnana only, which is mental speculation. Okay? Very important to understand. So when any word is united with yoga at the end, that means it's mixed with devotion. But if it is not specifically, if the word bhakti yoga, if those two words are not together specifically, and another word is before yoga, that means that the devotion is mixed with other processes. So in other words, the devotion is not pure if it is jnana yoga, or if it is one of the other types of yoga. It is coming close to being pure. It's on the way there if that's the intent, but not quite pure yet by itself. Okay? And then there's karma yoga, which is activity yoga. So in other words, uniting with the goddess and God. Hare Krishna, Mati. Thank you for joining us. I hope I pronounced that name correct. Mati Hyrule. It's nice to have you tonight with us. So yes, so that's what the term jnana means. And then the term karma, of course. Karma is referring to activities. All right, so karma can be referring to, most often is referring to activities as they and their results together. But the word karma itself is referring to activities. So karma, the term, can be referring to eternal activities or temporal activities. But the word itself means activities. Okay, so the word karma, in the word connection with yoga, basically it means devotion to Radha and Krishna through one's activities. Okay? That karma yoga can also be going in the direction of pure bhakti yoga as well, if that's the focus and the attention. Okay? However, oftentimes karma yoga is, well, when something's specifically referred to as karma yoga, it usually means that that yoga is mixed with some degree of attachment to results of activities, but there's still devotion involved. Okay? Now, these other processes can be pure in certain cases and still be referred to as those processes, but in the vast majority of cases, when those processes are being referred to independently, it's simply referring to that they're on the way to bhakti yoga and not quite there yet. Okay? All right, so the word Bhagavan, we'll see this word a lot in the scriptures as well. So Bhagavan is referring to he who possesses all opulences. Okay? So there are 6 opulences. They are infinite beauty, infinite strength, infinite fame, infinite wealth, infinite power, and infinite renunciation. Okay? And so these, the 6 opulences are referring to the one who has these 6 opulences in full, completely. Okay? That is the individual, the only individual that can be referred to accurately as Bhagavan in the literal sense. So in Sanskrit, we have to understand, just like there is the literal sense and the figurative sense in English. There's also a literal and figurative sense in Sanskrit as well. So Bhagavan, as the word applies to Krishna, is in the literal sense. However, the word Bhagavan can refer to many other individuals that are very powerful as well. In other words, so they possess all six opulences to a very large extent, to a certain degree, by Krishna's mercy, but not literally to the complete infinite degree. Okay, so Lord Brahma is sometimes referred to as Bhagavan, or Lord Shiva is sometimes referred to as Bhagavan. They're referred to Bhagavan figuratively, in the sense that they figuratively have the six opulences, but not to the degree that Krishna has them. Okay, and not independently. Same thing with the living entity. Any living entity in a very powerful position could also be referred to as Bhagavan in the figurative sense, so like an emperor or a king. Yes, exactly. And not sure Nadu was mentioning the asana postures and stuff, not doing it correct. Yep. So basically asanas is referring to the postures. Yoga itself is actually union with Radha and Krishna. So if you're doing the stretches, if someone's doing stretches, postures, and positions, and they're actually meditating on Radha and Krishna in Goloka and chanting the Maha Mantra while they're doing this, then it's actually yoga. Okay. Then it actually becomes real Ashtanga yoga. Okay, in other words, the Ashtanga is connected to the 8 goddesses of Goloka Vrindavan, whose names we will cover also very soon. Okay, so now that we understand what these things mean, now that we're understanding what Bhakti Yoga is, Jnana Yoga is, and Karma Yoga is, okay, and then there's other types of yoga, but the point is, and then there's Sankhya Yoga, which is the analysis of matter in relationship to transcendence and all these different things. But in essence, Bhakti Yoga is the main central focus and goal. All the other branches of yoga are basically leading to Bhakti and conducive factors to actual Bhakti Yoga. Okay, so yes, this word Bhagavan that's what it actually means. He who possesses all opulence. So when you hear Bhagavan, it's basically the God title. So, okay, Bhagavan, and so technically Krishna is actually Para Bhagavan. So the word Para, P-A-R-A, when we see it before a word, that's referring to the supreme Bhagavan, okay? So, the word Brahman is referring to the Absolute Truth, B-R-A-H-M-A-N, distinct from the word Brahmin with an I, okay? Or Brahmana with an A at the end, okay? The word Brahman by itself, without the A at the end, is referring to the light, the all-light that emanates from Radha and Krishna's forms, their eternal forms, okay? That all-light is inferior to them, and it's completely under their control, okay? And they are still independent of this light, but they display this light which emanates from their forms, okay? They are all pervasive, their forms, but the light itself is all pervasive, okay? But they themselves are beyond all pervasive, okay? 2 arms, 2 legs, their faces are beyond all pervasive. So, Brahman is referring to that light emanating from their forms. Para Brahman, so the source of Brahman, is referring to the forms of Radha and Krishna, specifically to their forms and their personalities. So that when you see the 2 words, when you see Brahman, it's usually referring to the light emanating from Radha and Krishna's forms, the Absolute Truth, in that sense, to that degree. And when you hear the word Para Brahman, that's referring to Radha and Krishna, the source of the Absolute Truth. Okay? So the Absolute Truth is them, Radha and Krishna, but they themselves are actually deeper and more significant than the Absolute Truth concept itself altogether as well. Okay? Very important to remember this fact in the course of practicing Krishna Consciousness and understanding these terminologies. Okay? Now, we're going to cover the terminologies which are referring to false philosophies, which are opposite and not Bhakti Yoga. Okay? Now, the first terminology that one needs to memorize is Mayavadi. Okay? The word Vada at the end of this Mayavadi word is referring to a philosophical viewpoint or an ideology. Okay? So Vada is referring to basically a viewpoint. And then Maya is referring to the illusory energy, the expansion of Srimati Radharani, which deludes the consciousness. And then so Mayavadi, those are the ones who they don't accept the transcendental eternal forms of Radha and Krishna. And what they do is they use word jugglery. In other words, so to basically concoct their own philosophies. So they juggle Sanskrit words, mix them up, and they're very much addicted to philosophical speculation. So in other words, they're addicted to jnana, which is not mixed with Bhakti Yoga. So they're addicted to jnana itself without Bhakti, or without Yoga. Okay? And so the word Brahmavadi is referring to that, but Brahmavadis, they're fixated on the light emanating from the forms of Radha and Krishna, but they're not so much interested in the forms of Radha and Krishna specifically. Even though Brahmavadis, distinct from Mayavadis, accept that Radha and Krishna's forms are eternal, they accept the eternality of the forms of the goddess and God, they do not accept that their forms are actually superior to and infinitely more significant than the light that emanates from their forms. Okay? So that's Mayavadi and Brahmavadi, two false philosophies that are very popular in the world today and have always been very popular in the materialistic world because they cater to the living entity's desires for their own sexual pleasure in the temporal state. That's why. Okay? And because they do so, that's why they're popular with living entities who are already interested in those things to begin with. Okay? Now, the word jiva is referring to the infinitely unique individual. So jiva, when you see this word appear anywhere, immediately understand this means infinitely unique. Okay? That's what jiva actually means. Okay? Now, because there are an infinity of jivas, we are one of them, which is infinitely unique, and because all the other infinitely unique jivas in number are also infinite, okay, they're all referred to as jiva, okay, infinitely unique individuals. So, Radha and Krishna are the original living beings, but they are not referred to as jivas because they are actually the source of the rest of the living beings, the central source, okay? And the fulfillers of the desires of all other living beings. So a very simple way to understand this is that just like we individually have infinitely unique eternal forms, so jiva means you're infinitely unique, which means you have an infinitely unique form, an eternally unique preference, eternally unique desires, activities, and everything else, pastimes. So you have an eternally unique everything about you that never leaves you, that doesn't have a beginning, and that does not have an end either. Okay? That is jiva. So, just like we are infinitely unique, Radha and Krishna are also infinitely unique. So a very simple way to look at this, for somebody new coming into Krishna consciousness, or not familiar with anything like this, is to understand that Radha and Krishna, their eternal function, role, desire, is to serve the desires of all other living beings. Okay? All of the jivas. And that is the way in which Radha and Krishna are infinitely unique. Okay? Whereas us, the other infinitely unique individuals, we have different functions aside from being the ones fulfilling the desires of all other living beings. Okay? We individually have different functions than Radha and Krishna. Radha and Krishna's function is the function of fulfilling the desires of all the other living beings. Okay? So, this understanding things correctly like this will help the mind be freed from these hierarchical ideologies, which turn people away, especially in the modern era, but all throughout history. The main thing that turns people away from any type of conception of God worship or devotion to God is the wrong ideology that there's a hierarchical system involved in this relationship with God, which is not the case. There's an infinitely unique, loving system that's happening, that's eternally in place. But it is not hierarchical at all, in any way, shape, or form. Okay? Any type of hierarchical perception is simply a materialistic perception of the absolute truth. Okay? The absolute truth does not contain a hierarchy as we understand it in the material world at all, in any way, shape, or form. Okay? Krishna is not a transcendental dictator. Radharani is not a dictator either. They do not behave like that, and they do not feel that way towards the living beings. Their focus is on fulfilling desires. And our eternal function and focus as jivas is on either going along with Radha and Krishna and assisting them in fulfilling the desires of all of them, themselves, and all the living beings, or we have the ability to focus on using them and using other living beings to fulfill our desires. Okay? So this is the eternal pivot point of the consciousness in each jiva. So now we're going to go into the word called tattva. We'll see this word pop up all over the place too. Tattva, T-A-T-T-V-A. This word is referring to the detailed scientific understanding of the interrelationship of Radha, Krishna, their expansions, all their energies, and everyone and everything else. That is what the word tattva means. All balled up into those 6 letters, okay? So just like there is sattva, which the word sattva is referring to goodness, purity in goodness, okay? Shuddha sattva, so the word shuddha is pure, shuddha sattva is pure goodness, the state that we are all in transcendence. And then sattva, of course, is referring to goodness itself, okay? So, now that we've covered the terminologies, let's go into more of the concepts themselves, okay? So, the concepts, devotional service, well, here we'll actually explain what the distinction between, we'll give some good examples too. We'll go into the distinction between jnana yoga, okay? Or we'll show examples of devotion to Krishna mixed with philosophical speculation versus pure devotion to Krishna without philosophical speculation involved. Now, what's interesting to understand and what to always remember is that pure bhakti yoga involves more information than jnana yoga does. In other words, even though information gathering is no longer a factor or a focus at all in pure bhakti yoga, information gathering and acquisition of information being understood inherently is present in bhakti yoga. So information is there, but information gathering is not the focus of bhakti yoga, okay? But information is still present, it's just not the focus of the activities of devotion, okay? Whereas in jnana yoga, getting more and more and more information is the focus of the practice, okay? So one may accept, in other words, one may be a devotee of Radha and Krishna, but they will be classified as a jnana yogi if that devotion to Radha and Krishna is based on or requires the information or knowledge that they are the Supreme Goddess and God. Okay? If this is a requirement in that devotion to be present, that is a slight tinge of bhakti yoga, or I should say jnana yoga mixed in with the pure bhakti. Okay? Now there are different degrees of this mixing of jnana with the devotion, various degrees of it. In the first degrees, it's mixed with first what's considered Aishvarya conceptions, in other words, opulence, and then from there it's mixed with the need for philosophical backing, okay, and stuff like this. So, but then pure devotion to Radha and Krishna is on the platform of beyond needing to see them as the goddess or God. It's on the platform of interacting with them on an intimate level, on the eternally infinitely unique level in paradise, beyond them needing to be the goddess or God, beyond there needing to be a reason why you're serving them. Okay, so in jnana yoga, there's always a reason why you're serving Radha and Krishna, whereas in actual bhakti yoga, there isn't any reason why you're doing it. It's just naturally what you're doing eternally anyway. Okay, it's very important. All right, and then so and if people want more information on this, I would encourage them to watch a video I produced on YouTube. You can go to YouTube Kamadeva Dasa, and you can also see it here on Facebook, but it's easier to find on YouTube. It's called Syncretic Brahmavadi, Real Syncretism versus Syncretic Brahmavadi, where we go much more in depth on this particular topic of the mixed devotion versus actual pure devotion, or the cultivation of pure devotional principles. Okay, so the interrelationship between Krishna and all the other powerful beings, so Shiva, Brahma, and everyone else, they're all under Krishna's control. So they're all devoted to Krishna. Okay, they're not equal or co-equal or at the same level. Never have been, never will be. This is very important to understand. So there is an order of operations, but it's not in a hierarchical fashion as we understand hierarchy currently in the material conditioned state. There is an order of operations, which is a more accurate wording, even though it's beyond time, because the word hierarchy has so many wrong connotations these days that do not actually accurately apply to the situation between Krishna's superiority to the living beings. Okay, so so of course the word samsara is referring to the cycle of birth and death, taking new bodies, leaving them, entering new bodies. And the word mukti is referring to liberation from that cycle. Okay, mukti can be of various types. So samsara and mukti are not so important when it comes to pure bhakti yoga, because bhakti yoga is transcendent to both samsara and mukti altogether. Okay? So whether one is taking rebirth in a material body or an externalized body, or whether one is actually liberated in transcendence, it really doesn't make much of a difference when one is engaged in pure bhakti yoga, because in both cases pure bhakti yoga is taking place. So the glories of Radha and Krishna are either being preached in a material world, or they're being glorified directly in paradise, face to face with them. In either case, all living beings around the individual engaged in bhakti yoga are being benefited equally transcendentally. Okay? So, there's a lot more to this, of course, but I just wanted to cover those basic terms so that anybody coming into devotional service, or anybody need a refresher on what those terms mean, this is able to keep this in mind and remember these things. Okay? Now the thing that I'm going to be covering much more in the next couple weeks, which really very much needs to be addressed, is the spreading of these jnana yogi practices and ideologies into bhakti. In other words, what's beginning to happen now is there's a lot of this monism being mixed into bhakti yoga teachings. Okay. Now monism, which is very interesting, monism can still be, if you look at the actual definition of it, monism can actually be still a personal ideology. It's not necessarily, that word monism isn't necessarily only referring to impersonalism. However, it is always referring to impersonalistic tinges somewhere involved in a philosophy or a view. Okay? That is what it is referring to, that. But amongst the monistic beliefs, there's many of them that seem like and pass off as actual bhakti yoga when they are actually in fact not bhakti yoga. They are actually jnana yoga. Okay? This is why Lord Chaitanya says we must practice jnana shunya bhakti. In other words, jnana completely freed altogether from mental speculations and philosophical speculations. And like we discussed before, numbers, okay, are living real beings. They emanate from the goddess and God. They use numbers in their service in very specific ways. And the numbers always are significant of very significant transcendental concepts. Or not actually transcendental individuals, I should say. Not even just concepts. So Radharani is the source of the number 0, in the sense of 0 means all accommodation. So when Lord Chaitanya says jnana shunya bhakti, he's referring to what he's really actually saying. Okay, he's referring to two things. He's referring to bhakti, which is freed from mental speculation, but he's also actually referring, what he's actually saying is bhakti that is full of information, understanding, and appreciation for Sri Radha. Okay? Which is what he's saying when he's saying jnana shunya bhakti, because shunya comes from Sri Radha, represents her all-accommodatingness of us, completeness. Okay? And then bhakti, like that. But shunya can also mean, in a different context, in a materialistic, externalized viewpoint context, people can perceive that as meaning nothingness or absence of something. The real meaning, though, is completeness, all-accommodation, fullness. Okay? So this is very important to remember regarding this word shunya, which is referring to 0. But 0 does not mean nothingness. 0 actually means completeness. Face-to-face, formful completeness, not impersonal completeness. Okay? Thank you very much. That is very, very important to remember this point. Essential, actually, to remember this point. Now, okay. When we're saying the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, why are we specifically saying these words? So if Radha and Krishna are the Supreme Goddess and God, why are we using the word Hare instead of the word Radha? Well, Hare is another name for Sri Radha. Ha and then Re or Hara is the Hara is the word referring to Radha in her hidden form. Okay, in other words, Radha is there, but she's covered and hidden. She's enticing Krishna to focus on her and to be more attracted to her. That is why in the Maha Mantra we're singing like this, because we want to increase and entice Krishna's attraction to Sri Radha, so to where he's eternally surprised by new things from her regarding this. Okay, so Radha and Hara are referring to the same individual. When we say Hare, that's when we're vocalizing something. So when we say Jaya Sri Radhe, the reason that the E is at the end is because when you're vocalizing a name that has A at the end, it always is shifted to E. Okay, so that's why we say Jaya Sri Radhe. Jaya Shri Krishna, all these types of things, because that's the vocalized version of a name. Okay? Calling out, basically. Now, we'll also read some verses from Sri Radha Sahasranama Stotra. So the 1,000 names of Sri Radha, right here. Okay? Now, these, this copy is a bit worn because I've flipped through it so many times, and but there's some amazing verses in here. Okay? Now, Lord Shiva says, he says, please, actually, no, this is what Parvati says to Lord Shiva. Yes, she says, please reveal to me the highest of all that you have heard, the most secret of secrets in your effulgent heart, which you have never disclosed to anyone before. And I'm skipping a bit ahead here, past some of the verses, so we can get to some of these core verses that are really very important and hit home on a deep level for our upliftment. And Lord Shiva responds, he says, never before have I spoken these names in any of the tantras. You should hear attentively, and then regularly recite these names of Radha as far as possible. By the glories of these names, Krishna, the Lord of Goloka, has become the Supreme Master. And then he starts to refer to so many of her different names, and I'll refer to a few key names of hers, okay? Gita Gamya, she is approached by one who sings her glories. Kamari Kanta Kamashi, and Kamalala Savigraha. She is the beloved of the enemy of lust, the queen of amorous pastimes, and the very source form of conjugal pastimes. Jayapara Jaya Jiva. Sri Radha is the bestower of victory, the source form of victory. Gayatri Vedamata Cha. She is the personification, or I should say rather, the source form, more accurately is the way to word this, of the Gayatri mantra, the mother of the Vedas. She is the most thoughtful, she is the fulfiller of one's desires. She is the ultimate goal of all aspiring devotees. Okay, Sri Radha breaks the contamination of Kali Yuga. She destroys the influence of Kali Yuga. Sri Radha is more enchanting than millions of cupids, and more beautiful than millions of cupids. Sri Radha is the mother of millions of cupids, the personification of the Kama Bija mantra, expert in the science of conjugal pastimes and manifests the art of conjugal pastimes. She is the controller of the night. She is the goddess, and she bestows that which has never been bestowed before. Sri Radha gives victory. She has conquered everything. She desires the welfare of the material world. She destroys the female demons and destroys the ghosts and evil spirits. Sri Radha fulfills all desires. Sri Radha is capable of doing anything and everything. Sri Radha is approached through sound vibration, and Sri Radha is the source form of sound vibration. Okay, so what I wanted to cover next was the word personification. Now I'm going to start covering some English words, okay? Or I should say some Sanskrit words translated over into English, two very significant ones that must be clarified and for everyone's benefit, okay? Because English, this must be understood about English. English words do not actually, many of them do not fully accurately translate to the Sanskrit original definitions. Very key terms actually don't. So basically the closest thing, according to the English speaking and thinking mind, that can correlate roughly to the concept, do translate over somewhat. And oftentimes you'll see this in the commentaries and purports that these words to save time and space basically are used, even though those words don't exactly correlate to exactly what's being discussed. Okay, so, oh, that's right. The first thing we need to finish off with, remember this, there is nothing equal to the 1,000 names of Sri Radha, nothing. Lord Shiva himself is saying this. There is nothing more auspicious and sanctified than the 1,000 names of Sri Radha. Now these 1,000 names are contained within the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, naturally. And you can also separately chant these names as well to help you remember all of Sri Radha's infinite glories and wonders in the process of devotional service. And it's said that if you chant these names on the Ekadashi day, all your desires will become fulfilled. Okay? And this is very true. This is actually a literal statement. You will see this play out very factually in your life. Okay, so the word personification. We're going to deal with this one first. All right? Well, first of all, let's deal with this one first. We're going to deal with the word incarnation. Okay, this English word incarnation, and why that's not actually an accurate translation from the Sanskrit word avatara. okay? But it's still used in a lot of commentaries because it's the closest thing that, in terms of English, that's able to provide the translation. So when Krishna actually appears, he descends and appears in the temporal world, but he doesn't take on flesh, though. So he's actually avatara. The word incarnation is not a 100% accurate translation from the word avatara. A more accurate way to explain it, but it takes much longer space, is the descended. Basically, Krishna descended into matter. The descended interactive form of Krishna descended not in the sense of becoming less or less significant, but descended in the sense of entering into without actually taking on any of things from matter, okay, at all. Incarnation accurately does refer to when someone appears in the material and then takes on flesh, takes on external bodies and external forms. So when Radha and Krishna appear, they don't take on an external form at all. They actually appear as they are eternally, originally into the matter, and then go back as they are originally, without taking on matter. Okay, so that's avatara. When you see the word avatar or avatar, it's referring to a descent that does not take on flesh or matter. Okay, when you see the word incarnation, that is referring to and there's actually a different Sanskrit word for specifically an incarnation. In other words, an embodiment, which is not the word avatar. It's a different word, which I'm not recalling off the top of my head because it's really not a principle that we really deal with that much because it's not such a big issue. Technically speaking, we're all incarnations of our original swarupas. In other words, every living being who's infinitely unique is technically speaking an incarnation because we're all being covered by flesh, even though we have an eternal identity beyond the body. We're not God ourselves, no, but but the word incarnation more accurately refers to our situation more accurately than it does to when Krishna descends, because when Krishna appears, he doesn't take on flesh, even though he has his form still, but he doesn't take on matter. Okay, and this is the thing materialists cannot understand. They cannot grasp this concept. They cannot understand how. First off, they can understand how Krishna has his eternal form, and they can especially not understand if he has that eternal transcendental form. They can't understand how he can come into matter and not take on a flesh form, but still have his form. Right? To them, they process, okay, he has to take on some form that's not his original form in some way, shape, or form to enter matter, basically. But that's not true at all. No. So that's that, and then the word personification. You'll see this word a lot, and actually the personification translation into English is very much not accurate at all. It's very, and you read the Acharya's writings. This is important to read the scriptures all the way through in depth to get the full context. They use the term personification in many cases just to save space, mostly on paper, understanding that the people reading that know what they're actually saying. So when they explain an elaborate, detailed purport on this, they explain clearly that Radha and Krishna are the source forms of everything else. In other words, they're not the personification of anything else aside from themselves. In other words, their form isn't representative of something else. They actually are the source of those other things. Right? Okay? So that's just why I always say, whenever I see personification written on a text or something, I always adhere to the Acharya's actual intention and how they describe the actual truth about the forms of Radha and Krishna. And I say the source forms of, okay? Or the source personalities of. So basically, like you saw me reading there, in the actual translations, people typed in personification of, like personification of bliss, personification of sound vibration, this and that, but that terminology isn't accurate, and that's actually the terminology that leads a lot of people to impersonalistic ideas, and they try to twist and use that terminology to try and justify impersonalistic ideas. So we don't have to use that terminology, and we actually shouldn't in our discussions, especially not nowadays, because unlike before, where people naturally understood that was just to save space on paper using that English word. Nowadays, if you use that at all, people will immediately start assuming impersonalistic things. So we don't have any more room at all to word things even slightly inaccurately, because otherwise people will just immediately dive head first into some impersonalistic ideology. Okay, so you must always say that Radha and Krishna are the source form of everything else, everyone and everything else. So whenever you're seeing anything like any principle or spiritual concept or whatever, so bliss, Radha is the source form of bliss, okay? Krishna is the source form of the masculine potency, the masculine principle, all these other things like this. So it's very important to get in the habit of saying and thinking in terms of they're the source forms of instead of personifications of. Because if you use the wording in your own brain, if you say personification of, it'll lead to these really weird subconscious ideas of their forms being representational of some other thing aside from their forms. You see what I'm saying? It's a very subtle thing, and the wording itself doesn't actually adversely affect a devotee because he understands the actual situation, that Radha and Krishna are the source anyway. But for jnana yogis and anybody not actually at the level of full-fledged bhakti yoga, they will be misled by that wording, by the wording personification. It will mislead them. Okay. So to not be violent on others and to help them, the correct wording is very important here. Now, Sanskrit is an amazing language to study, and you'll notice this, that all of the, this is a fact actually, all of the European languages, practically all of them, and all of the languages of ancient Persia all through to India, they're all connected in the same language family, which was called the Indo-European language family, more accurately termed the Aryan language families. And that's why studying Sanskrit is actually very easy and very free-flowing, because all the words, because it's naturally the eternal language. Sanskrit is the eternal language we speak, so we're, on a soul level, we're accustomed to speaking Samskritam, or Sanskrit. And that's why, if you're accustomed to already speaking a Sanskrit-based language that's very much directly connected to Sanskrit, which is all the European languages and stuff, English for sure, you'll notice that it's easy to study because many of the words already line up to the principles and concepts in English, and many English words line up with Sanskrit words also, naturally. So understanding what Sanskrit words mean and getting the gist of them is very quick and efficient if you're reading Prabhupada's translations and Bhaktisiddhanta's translations, okay? So, you know, they translate things like this to where, you know, they got the word for word, verse by verse, and the whole explanation there. So people have no excuse not to understand Sanskrit or what these key words or terms mean, or to at least give a basic, you know, understanding or study of it. And thankfully in Sanskrit, every term, every sound, every letter always sounds the same way when it's written. It's not like English where it might sound differently if written, you know, if where it appears or whatever. No, the symbols exactly mean the way they sound, or the symbols have a specific sound every single time, every time you see them. So if you see the symbol, you know what sound it means. So it eliminates confusion, like there is in a lot of other created, mentally concocted languages. Okay. So Sanskrit is very enjoyable to learn because when you chant the Sanskrit terms and meditate on them, you'll actually get deeper realizations on meanings of things, even beyond the ways in which they're explained in English. Okay. Basically, the English explanation gives the overall gist of the concept, but understanding the Samskritam gives you a much deeper appreciation of the meanings. Okay, so and you'll notice in this thing, this is very significant. So in this first verse, Ishvaraha Paramaha Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha, you'll notice in the line of Satchidananda Vigraha, Vigraha is the last word. And Vigraha is the last word because Vigraha is the most significant and most important. Okay? So in other words, Krishna's form, Radha and Krishna's forms are the first and foremost important. In fact, this is very interesting. Please remember this, my friends. Radha and Krishna's forms are even more important than the bliss that emanates from their forms. Okay? Because a lot of times people think the bliss is the most important. Actually, no, their forms are the most important first. Then the bliss is the next most important thing, then the knowledge, then the eternity. Okay? So their form and the bliss which emanates from their forms is the first and foremost importance together. Their form first, then the bliss, then the knowledge, then the eternity concept. Okay? So this right here, there's one verse in these texts, this completely destroys and eliminates any possibility of any kind of impersonalistic speculation whatsoever from ever arising. Okay, the first two verses of Sri Upanishad and the Sri Rama Samhita. And of course, the elaborate commentary and purports will allow any devotee and individual coming into devotional service to philosophically defeat soundly and solidly any other opposing viewpoints or ideologies. And this happens for two reasons: because you're actually speaking the absolute truth, which is absolute beyond relative truths. Okay, so in other words, beyond anyone's individual opinions, this is the truth, and also you are you're having access to the actual scientific information about everything, how all matter works, how all transcendence works, and everything in between. Okay? So, we're almost to the hour mark here. I've covered mostly what I wanted to cover in this video. This is designed for everyone, but it's especially going to be useful for people first coming into Krishna consciousness, trying to get familiar with the concepts and things. Because a lot of times as devotees, we're so used to these concepts and principles and discussing we sometimes might forget that, talking to someone directly about this who's never heard of it before, they simply may have no idea what we're talking about in terms of terminologies or words or things. You'll notice this about Krishna consciousness. It's like there's so much information that you already have access to and are already privy to. We may forget naturally that not everyone has access to all this information yet, right? So it's like, whoa, we got to first deal with the concept of, okay, the goddess and God, things people already understand and know about. Okay, the goddess and God concept, and then understanding, okay, there's actually something more beyond the goddess and God in terms of they have a deeper function and role beyond that function. Okay, so people understanding these things going into it is very important, and what the Mahamantra means, why we're chanting the Mahamantra, all these things, stuff like this, so they can understand clearly that we have a sound basis in why we're doing what we're doing, and a way to explain this that actually makes sense to just a layman off the side of the street who's never come in contact with this before ever. So and then later in the Brahma Samhita, Krishna reveals to Lord Brahma so many things. And then Brahma thought to himself later. So Brahma started realizing what his eternal form was. He said, by the recollection of Kama Gayatri, it seems to me that I am the eternal maidservant of Krishna. But though the other mysteries in regard to the condition of the maidservant of Krishna were not revealed to him. So Lord Brahma himself is also a living being. Okay, so just an infinitely unique jiva like this. But this is very interesting because Lord Brahma is so deeply intelligent and so vastly insightful. Even then, he still did not realize the full details of his eternal form yet. But he understood what rasa he was eternally attracted to Radha and Krishna in. That he's a manjari, like a young female girl, okay, a young female goddess basically in paradise. And he understood this. But the details of that he didn't fully grasp yet, exactly. But he was gradually getting there. So the course of Lord Brahma's life, he is the head acharya in our sampradaya. He is over the entire course of life, he's getting more and more information about what his eternal svarupa is. And because this Lord Brahma is actually a pure devotee of Krishna, he will be going back to Goloka at the end of his lifespan as Brahma in this case. Okay? And we will also be there with him as well in our eternal forms too. Okay? So, it's very important to remember. So if even Lord Brahma at that state didn't fully realize exactly all the details of his eternal form, we basically shouldn't take it cheaply and just think we can just easily or cheaply realize all those details yet either. Basically, we have to actually engage in the process of devotional service, and by doing so, those details will be revealed to us through the process of devotional service. Okay? Yeah, so there we go. We'll go ahead and end this one exactly at the hour mark. This has been nice. This is kind of more of like a grounded presentation, I guess. A lot of my presentations tend to be very flamboyant, I guess. It could be the word. Like a lot of lofty idealistic concepts or whatever. But, just on a very practical level, memorizing these texts and appreciating these first few verses in the Brahma Samhita and in the Sri Upanishad will keep the devotee solidly grounded and based in correct understanding of devotional service and tattva, and correct understanding of what we're supposed to be doing every day actually as living beings, now and in eternity as well. Okay, well, thank you my friends for watching. Thanks for being part of this presentation, and I will talk to you soon. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Shri Radhe. Hari Hari Bol.